Hello there. So a Vice President of the EU Parliament gets arrested along with 4 others over alleged corruption, and it's not front page news. Now, if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe and then like and comment below. Well. Several people, including a Vice President of the EU Parliament, have been arrested in connection with suspected bribery surrounding the Qatar World Cup. Reports so far name as being detained are Greek MEP Eva Kaili, who is one of the 14 Vice Presidents of the EU Parliament, Director of an NGO, No Peace Without Justice, Niccolò Figa Talamanca, trade union leader Luca Visentini, and a former Italian MEP Pier Antonio Panzeri, as well as his wife and daughter. Kaili's partner Francesco Giorgi also seems to have been swept up in the net, as well as her father, who was found in possession of a suitcase full of cash and was on the move, having been alerted by his accomplices, as investigators believe, says Belgium's L'Echo newspaper. And there may be more to come. Now, who's actually been arrested and who is merely helping with inquiries is unclear at the moment. But Belgian police have raided 16 homes, seizing cash, computers and phones in what is being described as a mushrooming investigation. And over €500,000 in cash was found at the home of Panzeri, and some €600,000 has so far been recovered in total. With Politico.eu reporting, the suspicion of the Brussels investigators is that Qatar used money and gifts to influence economic and political decisions in the European Parliament. And Eva Kaili is, or was, a socialist MEP, and Panzeri used to chair the European Parliament Subcommittee on Human Rights. And the anti-corruption campaign group Transparency International said this was not an isolated incident. And its director, Michiel van Hulten, said that the European Parliament had become a law unto itself and that over many decades the Parliament has allowed a culture of impunity to develop, with a combination of lax financial rules and controls and a complete lack of independence or indeed any ethics oversight. And talking of impunity, the Italian MEP Panzeri currently heads a Brussels-based human rights organisation called Fight Impunity. You just could not make it up. And who on earth would want to join a set-up like that? Not Brexiteers, that's for sure. Yes, I know this Tory mob has a lot of questions to answer about pandemic fraud, but I'm wondering if, when the lid is lifted on the EU, what will be found there? The Guardian report said that a law professor based in Belgium said that this scandal opens multiple Pandora's boxes all at once, including a flawed EU ethics system for MEPs and the scale of foreign influence over the EU. And here's a thought. Maybe our problems with EU intransigence where Brexit is concerned stems from too few bungs being given out by the UK to EU politicians and officials. Now we come to the cost of living crisis, and according to the Remoaners, only the UK is suffering from inflation and it's all down to Brexit. But nah. The team at Facts for EU have done a bit of digging and found that food price inflation is lower in the UK than it is in the EU. Yes, the latest OECD figures show the food price inflation in the UK is 16.4%, but it's 17.3% in the EU as a whole. Further, several of the EU 27 countries have some stingingly high food price inflation rates. Hungary, 42.9%, Lithuania, 33.7%, Latvia, 29.5%, Estonia, 28%, the Slovak Republic, 26%, the Czech Republic 25.1%, Poland 22%, Germany 19.2%, Portugal 18.6%, the EU 27 average 17.3%, and Slovenia 17.2%. Now, the one standout country in all of this is Switzerland. Although the Swiss are not in the EU, they do have a very complex set of bilateral agreements with the EU. But that does not explain why their inflation rate is at a surprisingly low rate of 3%, given what's happening around the world in general, and their food inflation rate is only at 2.9%. So what makes them different? Well, globaleurope.eu puts it down to a traditionally high level of price stability based on the following. First and foremost, the Swiss have a strong currency getting stronger. So buying stuff in gets cheaper over time, so dampening inflation. They have energy security. They produce 90% of their own electricity through hydropower and nuclear power, so are not as exposed to the volatile costs of gas as the rest of us are. Now, the fact they get the bulk of their electricity through hydropower does not make Switzerland's energy security proof that green works. No, what I'm talking about here is that energy security, however it is derived, is one of the keys. But Switzerland also has a high level of regulated prices in their inflation basket of goods. Merchants can often adjust prices only at certain times, which means regulated prices are less susceptible to short-term market fluctuations, says Global Europe. They also impose very high import tariffs on goods that are made or grown in Switzerland, and very low ones otherwise. This has the effect of decoupling the prices for Swiss goods from the global markets. Switzerland also enjoys a high level of productivity, amongst the highest in the OECD. So, as people are more productive, inflation is kept low. And lastly is the issue of how inflation is measured. But looking at the OECD conversion of Swiss inflation from the Swiss LIK method to the EU Harmonised Index of Consumer Prices, or HICP, Swiss inflation then drops from 3% to 2.9%. Now, the downside to all of this is that it makes the baseline cost of living very high in Switzerland, with Global Europe saying it was 51% higher than in Germany in mid-2021, before Russia invaded Ukraine. And it is this high price of living that has insulated the Swiss from the recent inflation spike. And it also seems to allow them to have a low debt-to-GDP ratio of about 40% and falling. No wonder the Swiss don't want to change their current patchwork of individual deals with the EU for one big one, and end up having to change all their price controls and the like, because what they've got seems to suit them well. And finally, when subscribing, please don't forget to press that little bell, and also select the all option, or you won't get any notifications when I publish a new video. And thank you all so much for taking the time to watch the show.